Hi, and welcome to the Early Childhood Innovation Zone Data Collection webinar. I want to make sure that everybody can hear before we get started. So if you could just go ahead and type into the chat box, let me know you can hear, and we'll go ahead and get started for today. Great, looks like everybody can hear. And if you have any issues at all, let me know and just type into that chat box. But I want to welcome you today. Thank you for your time as we share important information about data collection in the innovation zones. My name is Renee Petrick. I'm the Program Innovation Analyst here at Illinois Action for Children. I'll be facilitating our webinar today, and I'm really glad you could all join us. I want to let you know, too, that the webinar is being recorded, so be sure to share both the slides and the recording after the call. All right, before we get started, let's briefly review some GoToWebinar tips. If you're calling in by phone, if you could please mute your phone. If you're using your mic and speakers, I've muted you. So if you do have a question at any point, you can raise your hand, and I'll unmute you so you can ask your question aloud. And you can always type your question there into the chat box, and we'll be sure to pause periodically to check those questions. Another thing I might suggest is calling in by phone. Sometimes it's easier to ask your question aloud by phone rather than by your mic and speakers. And you'll see on your panel on the right side an option to click telephone, and it will give you the dial-in information and the access code and your PIN number. And if you have any technical issues at all, feel free to email Agnes, and she'll help you out right away. All right, let's go ahead and get started. Our agenda for today is to briefly review the purpose and sort of the goals of data collection within the innovation zone. We'll also talk about our different roles and responsibilities with data collection. And then we'll review the forms, the process, and timeline. And we'll also take some time to talk about some few tips and strategies for successful data collection. And we'll have time throughout the session for questions and answers, and also we'll leave some room at the end for any questions you may have. All right, so what are we measuring with our data collection? As you know, there are two main outcomes that we're measuring in the innovation zone. That's the number of children, 0 to 5, from priority populations enrolled in our partner program. And we're also measuring the number of centers with ExceleRate Circles of Quality. So why would we measure these fields, these outcomes? There's a few reasons. So one is aspirational. It really keeps us focused on our big goals, our big outcomes. It also helps us to be data informed. This information helps us to adapt and improve over time. Also, data sharing across our system helps to improve our system and is really at the heart of our collective impact work. Creating a shared agenda, shared measures, and shared goals help us to align our work and move towards real systems change in our communities. This data also helps us to align with each other and to be held accountable and in a process of small incremental learning cycles. So some key points to notice with the data is that you don't have to reach that big goal, that big challenge right away, right? So we're working towards collecting that data and reaching towards big outcomes for our communities. So we know that the path is not always predictable, it's not always straight, as you can see in our visual here, that there may be some bumps, challenges along the way. And that's where in our innovation zones we get to experiment and we get to innovate and try new things to break down those barriers and move forward to greater and greater outcomes and small wins and big wins for our communities. So another reason why we're measuring these fields, one is for the potential for stories. So there is great potential to share stories within our innovation zones with our partners and across the state and across our systems about why we do this work and about why this work is important for our children and families. The data is also collectible across our different programs, so it's things that we can collect and we can collect now. The fields also allow us to easily track information to report back. and the data fields are consistent mostly across all programs. However, we do understand that there's limitations, right? So the data doesn't always tell the full story or paint a full picture for us. Not every partner can share that data. That's a challenge too, having that capacity or that ability to pull that data and share that with us. We also know that a lot of child care centers don't have a common way or simple way to collect that data through a data system. And we also know that it does not demonstrate system connections. So there's some things with this data that we can't see, that we can't know. But I'm here to tell you that that's okay. So our data efforts are not a commentary on your work. There really are going to be a lot of different ways to tell your story, through your quarterly progress surveys, through interviews and surveys that our evaluators are going to conduct within the innovation zones. So this data, the data that you're collecting through this data collection cycle, is one part, one piece of that story. This data is also a developmental tool. It really helps us to see, plan, and improve, and really work through our build, measure, learn data cycle. So what's my role in collecting data and submitting data? So this is for our data champions within the zone. One is for you to identify, develop relationships with your participating early learning partners. So it's really building that relationship. It's also to distribute the instructions and the forms so that all early learning partners have those forms in their hands. It's also to be a champion of data and the data collection experience within your innovation zone. Another part of your role is to send those reminders. So we know those triggers, those reminders can really help us to stay on track and on time for our data collection due dates. Another part of your role is to then collect those forms back. So sending those reminders and being that person to collect them back, and also to review those forms, to check for accuracy and any additional needs with the forms. And then it's to submit all forms to me, Renee, on or before May 20th. Are there any questions so far about is there any questions before I go forward about your role in data collection? And feel free to type into that chat box. Great. There is a question about the form saying May 13th. That's a great question. I'll get to this again at the end, but the reason for that is the thought we have with the form is the forms come to you first, right? So the forms we're recommending the forms come to you by May 13th, and that's what it says on the form itself. So then that form is going to go to your early childhood partners, and it will say, turn that back in to Janice or Christina or whoever that data champion is within your zone by May 13th, and then you would turn that in to me by May 20th. So we're giving a sort of week leeway between when the programs turn the forms into you and then when you need to turn them into us. So then that way you can check the forms, you can follow up with anybody before you have to submit all the forms by May 20th to us. Hopefully that makes sense, and we'll go through that timeline once again later on in the webinar. Good question. All right, and what's Illinois Action for Children's role in collecting and analyzing data? For one, we will help to clean that data for analysis. So that data will come to us, we'll clean it, we'll make sure that it's clear, and follow up with any of the zones with any questions that we have about that data. We'll also create simple reports for the local innovation zones to use in action learning and in planning. So similar to what you received a few weeks ago, the spreadsheets and PowerPoints, we do something similar for you with the next cycle of data. And as always, let us know if there's a way that you'd like to see the data or how we can improve those reports. We'll also maintain a record of all of the qualitative data we receive to use with our new evaluation team. And we'll share that with them for further analysis. We'll also be making recommendations to the state on how to improve local data collection processes, and especially related to local site collection. So as always, let us know any feedback you have, any challenges, barriers you have to data collection, because we plan to put that into a more formal report and recommendations to the state. All right, so those are our different roles and responsibilities with data. So before we look into the forms, I want to give you a rundown of the different tools you'll have for collecting data. So one is a sample intake form, and I should say here this is not a mandatory form. This is just a tool to help you, but the sample intake form is something that a zone can use kind of as a cover sheet to collect this data to then report on the data collection form. So we'll take a look at what that form looks like. There's also a program enrollment form you've seen before. It's called HN16. So that allows you to report individual children without their names, of course, and report to us. And then there's a supplemental form that you can use. That's a program enrollment form called HN16 Part A. And keep in mind here that you can use either form. So programs can choose between HN16 or HN16 Part A. And we'll go over how those forms are different. The first form is for reporting individual children, and the second form is to give program totals. So that might be a useful form for a program that has a data system that can easily pull those numbers and report those numbers back. We also have a quality form, so that's for our 4 innovation zones that are working towards quality as a part of their work plan, and that form itself measures ExceleRate progress. So we'll take a quick look at that form too. I know you guys are pretty familiar with that one. And then lastly, we have a few Word documents that you received, and this is for tracking the data collection form. So this is actually a really, really important document for you and for us, and we'll take a look at how to use that form, why it's important, but it really just helps you to track the forms that you're getting back, and you can see across each data cycle who's giving you those forms, because we want to make sure that we have consistent reporting across programs. That's really helpful to track those improvements over time. Okay, let's take a look at our form. So here's the sample intake form. This is a great tool to share with your early learning partners if they don't have something like this already. Again, this isn't a mandatory tool, it's just something to help you if it's helpful for your programs. So perhaps some programs are already collecting this information. If not, this could be a great thing that they could use going forward. So if a family comes to the program, wants to enroll in the program, they can fill out this very simple cover sheet, and this sheet can go right into a family's program file. And then once data collection comes around, they can easily check off those boxes in our form. And you'll see that this form aligns with the preschool expansion, eligibility, and weighted priority enrollment forms, and that's because we wanted to keep all of our forms, our documentations, as closely aligned as we could be. All right, so here is our high needs innovation participating early childhood education program enrollment form. So that's always a mouthful, and my favorite joke to tell with this is that it sounds like a virus or a vaccine, so we're going to work on our naming in the future. But we call it that because HN stands for high needs, and 16 is the fiscal year that we're currently in. So here you'll see sort of basic about this form, who gets this form. So this goes to each participating early childhood program that you're working with in the innovation zone. The purpose of this form is to collect total enrollment and priority population enrollment. And then you'll see on where to submit each data champion in the zone, your name, email, phone is included there on that line. And then you'll see when to complete this form. So we're using, again, that point in time. So the point in time of April 15, 2016. So that's the date in which we want to collect enrollment from as our snapshot. And then those forms are going to be submitted to you, to the Innovation Zone Data Champion by May 13th. And then they'll be submitted to us at Illinois Action for Children by May the 20th. So you'll see here instructions on how to fill out the form, but we'll go ahead and take a look at the form themselves and how to use these instructions. You'll see too that the forms are available in PDF and Excel, so whichever works for you and your program partners. All right, so here's what the form looks like itself. You'll see a top section, just contact information. We really do want to stress that your program partners put their name, but also their contact information. So this is something that is commonly left out of the forms and is actually really helpful for us, because then we can follow up directly with the person who completed the form. Because sometimes there's data that's confusing or missing, and it's helpful for us to have that contact right off the bat. So when you're checking the forms over, if you notice this is missing, this is a great thing to either send back to the program and have them fill in, or to fill in yourself before you send to us. So then you'll see a section over here for the child's ID number. Just keep in mind we strip any identifying characteristics of the child, so we don't want to include the name, but you can include, your program partners can include ID numbers. We also include zip code here. And then all the priority populations are listed here. So programs would simply be putting a 1 in those different boxes. So it's possible for a child to fall into multiple priority populations. The child could be homeless and also experiencing deep poverty, for example. And if they don't fall into any of those categories, you just put a 1 here in that none column. So again, this form is for programs to report individual children. So they would put child 1 here, they'd fill out across the different characteristics, how the family heard about the child, and then the next child would go on the next line. And so really you're only putting 1s in these boxes. Okay. Here is the back page of that cover sheet, the instruction sheet. So this tells a little bit more about what those different priority populations mean. So these are research-based definitions, and just for consistency and alignment, if any of your program partners have questions about what these categories mean, this is a great tool to point them to. And here you'll see very clear definitions about what we mean when we say child welfare or language isolation. And then you'll see definitions here too for the referral sources. All right, here's a closer look at the form itself. And then here is the totaling page. So the second page, there is a place to total. You can refer back to that instruction sheet for totaling. And another great thing is if you're using Excel, there's formulas within the cells already, so it will populate for you. So that's a really easy way. As the program's going through and putting in their 1s, it's going to add up the columns for you. It's going to add up total enrollment for you. It'll just make it really easy. One thing that we do ask is for you to, each of our data champions, to just check the forms and make sure that they are totaled and make sure that the totals add up correctly, that they make sense, and that they're calculating total enrollment and priority population enrollment correctly. And if you have any questions at all about this, you can definitely give me a call, Agnes a call, and we'd be happy to assist you. All right, so as I said, if you're using Excel, there's a really easy way. There's formulas already included, so it will total those columns and those categories for you. All right, I'm going to pause here, and I'd love to hear if there are any questions about this first form, Form HN16. All right, seems like we're good. I think we're old pros at this. Okay, so we're going to take a look at HN16 Part A. So again, a program can choose between either form. So they can choose the purple form, HN16, or this kind of salmon pink reddish color, HN16 Part A. So the difference is that this allows programs to report program totals. So this is really great for a program that has a data collection system. They can pull their own report, and they can just transfer numbers from their own report onto this form. So you'll see the top portion is pretty much the same basic information on who gets the form, who to turn it into, when to turn it in, and instructions here on the bottom of the form. All right, so here's the form itself. You'll see that this is also available in PDF and Excel. Here's the back page of the cover sheet, similar to the purple sheet. Just gives you very clear instructions on the priority population definitions. And here, just looking closer at the top portion of the form, again, the program will put their program name. We are asking that this is consistently reported. So we'll talk about this again later in the webinar, but that the program is reporting their name very clearly and consistently each time they're turning in that data form. That really helps us to track the programs more accurately. We'll talk more about that. And then again, just making sure that their contact and email information is there. That really helps us for follow-up. All right, so here's a closer look at the form. So you'll see it looks very similar to other forms. There's fewer spaces here though. You're not reporting child ID numbers. You're simply listing the zip codes. Here you'd put totals. So instead of putting ones like you do on the last form for the individual children, because you're reporting by zip codes, let's say I live in 60647 and there's 10 teen parents, 5 are homeless, 30 are in poverty. So you see I'd put the totals across these rather than ones. So again, totals across these different areas as well. Here again, you'll have total columns, and then total enrollment and total priority population. And you'll see when you mark the other categories, we added a space down here that you can list the other ways that the program or the family heard about the program, and then the totals. All right, so that was quick, but any questions about Part A? Another question here. Should the person reporting on their program use the Excel form provided? Yeah, so it's really up to programs which form they want to use. They can use PDF and they can handwrite it if they want, or if they prefer to fill in Excel either on the computer or if they want to print it out and handwrite it. It's really up to them if they want to handwrite it or write in that Excel document. It's really up to them. We're willing to take whichever way is easiest for them and more comfortable for them. All we really ask on your part is if you can check those numbers and see that they make sense. So if make sure they're totaled correctly, that there isn't any missing information. So I'm just looking through these questions here. So the question is, can they choose to do Part A or HN16? Exactly right. So they're choosing between either form. So they don't need to do both. So we're not asking them to fill both forms. It's just picking whichever one is best for them and best for their needs. So remember that purple one, the first one is a way for, let's say a child care program doesn't have their own data system and they need to input each individual child so that they can total, then they would use that form. If a program has a data system, they can pull those numbers, it's really easy for them to report totals, then they would use that second form, the Part A form. Really, just to stress too, what we're most interested in are the blue boxes on either form. The blue boxes on either form are the totals, and that's what we're most interested in. So that purple form, the first form, really just gives them a way to get to the totals. So we wanted to be able to provide that, some avenue, some tool for programs to calculate the totals. Great, keep sending your questions, these are great. Let me just take a quick look through. Great, so a question, how are you working with ISB to communicate the importance of data collection with innovation zones such as PFA and PI data, IDHS, EI data, and Illinois Head Start data? Yeah, great question. So we are in contact with a lot of our different program partners with CPS, and DFSS, with ISB, to share with them about our forms and talk to them and find out ways that we can get data directly from them. There are some ways in which they can help us in which we're hoping to work more directly with them. And one thing that we're working with is how to really understand the different data systems, so the SIS system, the COPA system, and how we can advise programs to pull data from those existing systems to then share with us. But we're also very open to kind of suggestions that you have on how to work better with those state entities and what you think would be helpful. So do feel free to give me a call or shoot me an email after the webinar today if you do have ideas on how we can strengthen that partnership and what you would need from them or how we can best give feedback to them as well. So great question. All right, so just a few tips on data collection. So we've been entering the data, and we just wanted to point out a few things that would be helpful when you're turning in that data. So we want to advise programs to ungroup zip codes where they can. So that would be just putting one zip code on a line. So each zip code would be listed separately. Let's say it's really hard for a program to provide zip codes. They don't collect the information that way. That's fine. We don't want the zip codes to be a barrier to submitting that data. But wherever you can ungroup those zip codes, it's really helpful to then track that information over time, and that's something you can look at within your innovation zone to see is there anything interesting in terms of where are most of the homeless families residing, where are children in the child welfare system residing, things like that. Great, and another thing we touched on a little bit earlier was making sure to provide those program totals, the total enrollment and the priority population enrollment. So there's times we'll get forms where these boxes aren't completed or written in. Hopefully the Excel sheet does help because those formulas are already there. But again, just checking each form and making sure that they are totaled and that they add up to what they're supposed to add up to. And if you have any questions on how to calculate the total enrollment and priority population enrollment, definitely just give us a call, shoot us a message. We're happy to walk through that process. All right, so I want to say again with the forms that a program can choose between either form. So again, we're not asking them to fill out both forms and do duplicate work. So that would be really something important in your messaging to them when you meet with them in person, when you send them an email, that you're telling them they're choosing between either form and making the distinction between the different forms. Because we definitely don't want anybody to do two forms. It's that they're choosing between either one based on what works for them and what works for their data systems and their reporting. And they can also choose between that PDF form or the Excel form. Great. And another thing that's come up is some questions from innovation zones about tracking their own strategies and their own intake, referral, and enrollment. Absolutely. This is a really important and great thing to note. So we really strongly encourage innovation zones to track and document their strategies, their learning, their process, their own data. So here's one tool that we've helped to create and that a few innovation zones are using to track their own intake and referral. So for example, in an innovation zone like Aurora, you guys are working really closely with homeless shelters, with food pantry. I know in North Lawndale you guys are working with the homeless shelters, with healthcare centers, and doing a lot of intake yourself internally. And so this is a great tool to track that intake and really see who you're referring to. It's a space where you can record your follow-up notes and just track the strategies that are within your zone. So if this is something that you're interested in, we can absolutely set up a time to talk through this. Just shoot me a message about this form and I can send it over to you. It's in our Google Drive and ready for sharing and use by you. And you can always feel free to adapt any of these tools that we provide. Great. So we have another form for quality improvements. I'll go through this one quick. I know this only applies to our 4 innovation zones that are working on quality as a part of their work plan. So that's Aurora, Greater St. Louis, Thornton Township, and Williamson County. We'll be using this quality improvement form. So we'll just take a quick look through this because I know that you guys you're pros at this one now. So here we go. Here's our ExceleRate program quality form Q16. So this form goes to each innovation zone lead or coordinator. So it's actually the lead or coordinator or the data champion that's completing this form on behalf of the early learning program. So I know that in some innovation zones that data champion has just scheduled some time to call up the program and just have a conversation, ask them, kind of walk through the different fields of the form and fill it out for them, and then call up the next program and do the same thing. And then that's been a pretty quick and easy process. The reason why it's helpful for the innovation zone lead to do this is because it can help to eliminate any sort of confusion or any problems filling out this form accurately, because if you know the form really well and you can just ask the questions yourself and then make sure the boxes are checked off in the way that they need to. And this one is pretty quick, so rather than sending it out, completing it yourself along with the program partner can be a quicker, easier way to get that data. So that's what we would recommend with this form. So this form indicates the extent to which a program has reached an ExceleRate circle or the extent to which they've begun or worked towards that rating. So again, the innovation zone lead fills out this form, and this one's sent to me here at Illinois Action for Children. All right, we'll look through quickly just the form itself. So you'll see it looks the same as it has the past couple cycles. You'll see contact information at the top, Table A, the programs reporting their quality status, Table B, quality target, and then Table C, quality progress. So they'd be marking off these different columns on the things that they're doing to get to quality. Here's that back page of the form. This isn't a mandatory form. It's really just to help the program kind of see the different parts of the quality process. And then we added a comment form last spring because it seemed like a really helpful section to have so that you can comment or note anything about your data. All right, a few tips on this form that we wanted to point out. So it would be checking only one box in that quality progress. So that just really makes it easy and clear. So again, when you're filling out this form on behalf of your early learning program, just making sure that it makes sense so that your quality progress, if you marked preparing, then you wouldn't mark this box. So just making sure that the boxes that you're checking make sense. And here, the same thing, just making sure to check that one box across here. If you have questions on that, let me know. Another tip is to walk through these different options with your early childhood program, because we really are interested in the steps that a program is taking in order to get to quality. So is it that they skip the orientation and maybe it's taking them longer, or are they in a community practice and has that been helpful? So this will be interesting for us to know and then potentially follow up with in interviews later on. All right, any questions about the quality form or any of the forms? Okay. Okay, we got a comment about one zip code. Mentioning one zip code would be good to add in the instructions. That's a great point. Yeah, we can plan to do that. How will coaches be assisting their innovation zone communities with the data collection process? Given limited capacity, this would be a great way to get support. Absolutely. So our coaches are here in the room, and they are smiling and nodding, and they're ready to help you as you need help. So that would be a great way to get in touch with me, get in touch with your coach, and let us know what you need, and let us know how we can help you, whether that's helping with the forms, making phone calls, going to sites. We are here to help and support. So that would just be letting us know how you need help. Okay, just looking through the questions here. Great, so we'll plan to add in the future that it's one zip code per line, and that it can be typed or handwritten. Those are good instructions. There's a question about, is it helpful at this point to get additional programs to do data collection? Or should we focus on the programs who already filled this out? Really great question. So we want you to focus first on those that have been completing the data collection process, who've been completing these forms. That's where you should go first, because we want to get data from them consistently over time. So on that Word document that you received, it will show you who submitted data during each cycle. So it's that we want to go back to those programs that we're working really closely with, that we're partnered with, that we're working on our strategies with, and get data from them first. Let's say a new program has become a part of the Innovation Zone work. They're starting to come to your meetings, you're building relationships with them, you're starting to refer to them, but they didn't participate before. Absolutely try and involve them in this data collection process. So we do encourage that as well. So if a new program partner has come into your work and is a part of your work, it's a great opportunity to build that relationship and ask them to share that data as well. And we can talk about ways to support that and help with communication around that. So there's a question about, on the Q16 form, do you want a number of staff that have credentials? That's a great point. We're just asking for sort of those check boxes, but that could be a great place to put in your notes section. I would encourage that. So putting in your notes section, any additional details or data about that would be really helpful. Another space for that would be in your quarterly progress survey. If that's something that you've been working on in the zone, that'd be a great space to report on any credentialing or any added information about the process that programs are going through to improve quality. Great, these are great questions. Thank you, keep them coming. All right, so we're gonna go through just a few more things. All right, so we talked about this a little bit, but wanted to circle around to this idea that matching matters, right? So we want to be able to make our apples to apples sort of comparison from program to program, from year to year. So that consistent reporting by program allows us for that year-over-year comparison. So this really helps to tell a clearer story. So if we have data coming in from a program one year, and the next cycle we want to get that data again, and the next cycle, and that just helps us to really show the differences over time and to see how enrollment's increasing, more priority populations are being served, and when we can look at a program over time, it really helps to paint that picture and tell that clear story. So let's take a look at how we might think about this. So there's a lot on this page, I understand, so we'll be sending these slides out afterwards. So these are the Word documents you received. They're tracking tools for you. They're data collection tracking tools. So this is a way for you as the data champion in your zone to keep track of the programs that have submitted data and who you still need to collect data from. So this is a form you'd kind of keep by you as you're going through this next month of data collection. And it's a form that you would add to as people start submitting their data. And it's a form you keep over time and that you'd submit to us with your data. So let's take a look at a few things here. So you'll see the form that you got had all the different program names that have submitted data, their names listed here. One thing we want to point out is that it's really helpful to report those names, that site name, program name, consistently from year to year. So there's times where we're getting one name on a form, and then it's saved as a different name in the file, and then it's written under a different name in this tracking document. So when we go to enter the data, this can be a little bit tricky to understand who that program is, how it corresponds, has that program submitted data from year to year when the program name is changed. If the program name has indeed changed, they've changed their name, then that's perfectly fine, but just make a note of it to us, what the name was before and what the new name is now. So that will really just help us to clarify any confusion in the form. So again, in the form, when you submit the form and the program writes their name, just making sure that that program name is matching up. So the same name is on the form that's in this tracking tool here will really help us to enter that data consistently going forward. So if there's any questions about that, let me know. So then you'll see a check mark. So these are the programs that submitted data in the fall of 2014, and then here in fall of 2015. So you'll see these two programs, Program J and K, they weren't involved the first cycle because they weren't a part of the Innovation Zone work, but they joined in the fall of 2015. So that's to that question of should you be collecting data from people? I would say yes, if they've become involved in your work, we want to try and get data from them. Here, the program closed, so there's no possibility to collect data. So this is a great spot in your notes section. If you didn't collect data from a program, let us know why. We really are interested. If it's because they didn't have the capacity, the program closed, if it's because you reached out to them and they didn't respond, those details really help us to understand what are the challenges and barriers to collecting data within these programs. So this is one way to kind of track that and let us know those things. So again, pointing out reporting consistently, so programs reporting from each data cycle 1, 2, 3, it really helps us to understand those changes over time and really tell a greater story with that data and learn more and strategize better with that data. So again, you'll save this document for your own tracking, and this will be a space where you can add those programs as they submit the data. It will tell you who you need to follow up with, who still hasn't submitted data, and then this is something that you would turn into us when the data is submitted. Any questions about this form or about tracking that data, reporting that data consistently? Okay, I don't see anything coming in. But if you do have any questions as we go forward, when you're looking at this form, reach out. We're happy to walk through this. All right. So some key dates for data collection. So you'll see that the high needs, the priority population enrollment form, will be due to you. We're suggesting, again, on that form you'll see it's due to you by May 13th. But due to us at Illinois Action for Children by May 20th. And we give that leeway so that you have some time to review those forms, to check them for accuracy, follow up as needed, and then submit to us. Again, we're using an enrollment date, a point in time date of April 15th. And keep in mind, you'll submit that program tracking list with the forms. So you're submitting all the forms together, but also that Word document tracking sheet. Quality improvements, so that form is as of October 15th, and you'll submit that to us by the 20th. And I'll send out calendar invites to each of you too, so then you have it on your calendar, you know which date it needs to come to Illinois Action for Children. All right. So how should we do this? One thing we might recommend is inviting all your program partners to pull data that they have already. So let's say they have they're a PFA program or a PI program and they have the SIS database, the Student Information System database. They can pull whatever the data that they have from there. So they can pull homeless information from there. They can pull IEP information. They can pull limited English proficiency from that system. If there's any questions about that, we can talk through sort of what data from SIS makes sense for the data you're reporting here. And we're working right now with a few people to kind of look at those different databases, SIS, COPA, a few others, to provide some better guidance to you and therefore your program partners on how they can use those systems to pull their data, leverage that data to make it easier for them. So we'll be in touch as we develop any sort of guidance around these different data systems. All right, so there's 2 options for submitting. So you can either email those forms directly to me at the email address on the screen, or you can mail them. You can mail hard copies. And if you have any questions at all, you can give me a call or shoot me a message. You can put me on speed dial too. I'm around for any questions about this process or any technical assistance needs. All right, some tips and strategies, and you guys might have tips and strategies too. So as we're going through this next section, if you want to type in any of your tips and strategies, I'd love to share those with the group. So some things that we wanted to share, one is build relationships. So we know that it can take a lot of time, a lot of patience to do this data collection process, but building those relationships will make it easier over time. So letting your programs know that you're there for them, that you're behind them, you support them, and just really building that relationship along the way. Also allow your partners and your community to share and learn from each other. So this could be a space where you bring them together, what works for them, what makes data collection easier, what's their process, what's their strategy. Learning from each other and knowing that we're in it together can be really helpful and really supportive. Visit your sites before the data collection point to really set expectations, clarify questions, really alleviate any stress, any concern. So maybe that's you call up your different program partners, or maybe you visit them in person. I believe in Austin they were going out one by one to each site to talk through the forms, and that's going to really help to clarify the forms and the process. You can also bring everybody together. Almost every Innovation Zone last data cycle did a data collection info session. So if that's something that's helpful to your partners, they want to do that again, you want to support them in that way again, I'd be happy to come out to your zone myself or provide any slides, forms, tools that might be helpful for a small group get together like that. All right, a few other things. So make phone calls, send emails. I know a lot of our innovation zones, I saw some emails that Christina sent before and Delilah sent before, really encouraging innovation zones. So anytime you can send a cute little picture or an encouraging quote or a message will really help to ease that process, just to make people smile a little bit. And we also know that those triggers, those reminders really help people and help keep people on track with those deadlines and timelines. Offer to work with the site and help them out. So it's possible that I can come in, Agnes, our coaches can come in as needed to assist with data collection. Offer to share results with the sites. So we just shared some data with you. Think about how that could be helpful to your program partners to see their own data. And just make sure if you're sharing any data across different programs to ask for their permission to share that data with each other. So, or stripping their names if you're sharing a kind of spreadsheet with them. So just making sure that everybody agrees to have their data shared with each other. We also want to say try not to pressure sites or make them feel, bad about this process, but really just to encourage them. So we want you to be persistent, but not add too much pressure, right? So persistent, kind, and follow up as you can. And just keep in mind that multiple contacts may be necessary. So you might have to contact people in different ways, by phone, by email, maybe in an in-person meeting. And we know that feels like a lot, but those different contacts, those different ways, that encouragement can really help. And we know that the collective impact research around this says that that's normal. So we're going to ease into that discomfort and realize that this is kind of a part of that process, and we're here to support you along the way. All right, so what do you guys get out of this, out of all this data collection work? So we're instituting a few new things that I'm very excited to share with you for this next round of data collection. So Innovation Zones who submit data on time will receive a gift card bonus for their time spent requesting and collecting that data. So that's really exciting. So each innovation zone, it's possible that you get this. You would need to submit that data on time. Another thing is that we're going to award a prize to communities with the highest quality of data. So you're probably asking what that means. That means that, one, it has to be completed on time, but it also be that the forms are complete, that all the fields are complete, that the data entered makes sense, so those totaling fields make sense, that they're added up correctly. It would mean that contact names are included, again, all those different fields. So just be making sure that it's accurate, it's complete, it's of the highest quality when you submit that. So that'd be a space where you'd be really reviewing those forms and filling in as needed. And then another thing we'll be providing is gift cards. So this will be given to you for you to distribute to your partners, because this could be a really exciting way to get people involved. So then you could offer a raffle to everyone who's completing the data, and it could be, we were thinking Visa gift cards, so then they can use those Visa gift cards for funds for their program or to celebrate their data collection or what have you. So it would really be up to you, and we'd give out the same amount to each innovation zone, and we could give it to you in whatever denomination. So let's say you wanted to give out a few different raffle prizes, that's perfectly fine. We're just going to give the same total amount to each innovation zone, but it can be in whatever sort of denomination you want, if that makes sense. And lastly, we will put together some customized reports for innovation zones submitting that data. So similar to what you saw last month, data spreadsheets and PowerPoint presentations with all of your data for you to use with your zone. Any questions about this? Okay, so we have a question. Will you provide supportive email messaging letters this year like last year? Yes, great question. Absolutely. So I'm working on one right now that's kind of an opener email with the due dates, with encouragement. So we can plan to do the same thing. If there's certain things that you'd like, if it's kind of an opening letter or a reminder message or that sort of thing, just let me know. You can type into the box if you want, if there's certain things that come to mind right now, or you can feel free to email me later. But we're planning to do the same thing, some email messages, some talking points that you can use when you meet with partners. So that way it's just really easy. You can copy and paste. You can adapt it. You can add in your own voice, your own flavor, your own flair to those messages. But hopefully that language will help make things a bit easier. I'll also plan to send regular reminders. So that's just to remind you along the way, not to pressure you, but to remind you. I know for me that's really helpful when I have a little nudge. Oh yeah, I need to reach out to my partners again. All right, any other questions? Great, so how many gift cards are available to partners? Good question. So what we're planning on right now, we're confirming the budget, but what I've talked about with Leah is that we'd provide $100 per community, but again, that could be in whatever denomination you want. So let's say you just want one $100 Visa gift card, we'll give it to you that way. If you want 5 $20 gift cards, you could do it that way. So it's really up to you and what you think your partners would be inspired by, encouraged by, whether it's a raffle, a drawing, a prize for completing, what have you. So I'll be following up with you directly and to understand what type of card you need, how many, but plan for $100 to share with your partners. So the question is, when will this be ready for distribution to programs? Week of Young Child begins next week, and Leadership Connections in high schools closing May 15th. So just to clarify, do you mean when will the gift cards be ready, or when will the forms or the messages be ready? And I can just say the forms are ready to go unless you see something that needs correction. Otherwise, those forms should be ready to go. And then in terms of the message, I can commit to getting you guys something by Thursday, if that sounds okay. So first initial message to your partners, I would send to you for you to adapt and use by Thursday. And then the gift cards, that's something I'll follow up with you. I'll reach out to you by the end of this week to kind of understand what you need and when you would need them by. So if it's something you wanted to raffle at the end, I'll work with you to figure out when you need to have those prizes by. Okay, so the forums and messaging. Okay, great. I think I answered that. Great. And it sounds like we wanted a few small changes on the instructions, so I can work on that. Any other questions? Okay, so we learned about how you will benefit from this, a few points on how your community will benefit. So making these contacts will help to strengthen your relationships and your partnerships. Data sharing will really help strengthen your community systems approach, your collective impact approach. Participation will boost your capacity to do local evaluation and do that action learning within your innovation zone. And timely data will allow faster return on reports to your community to really help to build, measure, learn. All right, so just a checklist for success. Make sure your fields are matching up, that the fields are filled in completely and consistently. Make sure to delete any and all child information, so that's their names. We want to make sure to strip any names and just use child ID numbers on that purple form. You want to make sure to report program and site names consistently from year to year, so use that Word document tracking sheet to help guide you. We realize that programs might call themselves different things, but if you could do your sort of due diligence to review the forms and make sure they match, that will be really helpful. Don't forget about the date of the data collection. So we have our point in time of April 15th, and then our due date back to us at Illinois Action for Children on May 20th. Make sure to include contact name and number and email. That really, really helps us to be able to follow up directly with your partners as needed. All right, just some few frequently asked questions. We have our deadline, so May 20th to Illinois Action for Children. We suggest that they submit to you by May 13th to give you time to review and follow up. What if all partners do not submit data? We really just prefer that you try, you contact the sites, you try the best that you can. If you tried everything and all efforts fail, just make a note in your data. So let us know that how many attempts you made or what you did to get that data, and that will really help us to understand your process and the challenge. What if you reach out and no one responds? I would suggest trying a different method. So maybe if you sent them an email, maybe try giving them a call or setting up a face-to-face visit. Sometimes that face-to-face can really help to clarify and build that relationship. Just try and make it as easy and convenient as possible, the meeting with them or the data collection. Anything to make it easier will really, really help. Let your programs know that aggregate numbers are okay. Using their data reports are fantastic, and they can just transfer that data onto our form. If all efforts remain unsuccessful, submit what you have. Submit whatever you have when you have it. And then just a few more. So from how many sites should I collect data? So we had this question earlier. So first you're going to target those who have been a part of your innovation zone work, those that have been submitting data. You want to start there, right? Those that you have relationships with, that you're working on your strategies with, that have submitted data. Then you're going to go next to other early learning partners who have become a part of the work, that are receiving referrals, that are becoming a part of your strategies. So you'll be adding on partners as you go. All right, do you have tips for getting sites to share their data? One thing would be to provide the site with a report, including your most recent fact sheet, data that you've already received. Let them know how data sharing can really help make improvements for their program, for children in the community and the system as a whole. When's the next cycle of data collection? The great news is that the next cycle is our last cycle. So we have this cycle here that we're currently in, and then next fall will be our next and last cycle. So that's cause for celebration. We're at one more time in fall of 2016, and that will be using a point in time of October 15th. So we'll continue with October 15th as our point in time, and that data will be due a month later in November. So that's a good thing to keep on your radar. All right, who to contact with questions? You can contact me, email, phone, speed dial at any point. And here are a few resources we want to provide on data collection, particularly in collective impact. So there's some really great ideas here on collecting data, how to make it easier, how to share data, things like that. All right, any questions? All right. I know that we are nearing the end of our time together. I'm going to ask for any other questions. And of course, feel free to email me if something comes up after the call. And we will send the PowerPoint slides and the link to the webinar recording after today. All right. Well, I want to thank you so much for your time, and I want to thank you for being data champions in your innovation zone. The data that you collect really does support the work that you do in the zone, and it will help make improvements for children and families. So thank you, thank you, thank you, and happy data collecting. Talk to you guys soon. Bye. Thanks.